Hello and welcome everybody to our Fantasy Grounds Saturday stream. This is our map and image creation, and I'm Josh, so thanks everyone for joining me today. We're going to be going over the new art pack that's going to be released this month, which is pretty exciting. Lots of cool stuff in there and a lot of animated images, so that should be super fun. It's a volcanic art package. It has lots of animated lava textures, fire, smoke, some very dynamic kind of images, and I think that's something that's always super fun to include in the creation process. So things that are the most dynamic, I think, are the things that work best and in an animated sense, right? Something that's less of an impactful kind of image, I think that will work better as a static image. And so that's the kind of the direction that we get. And I think that this is going to kind of really showcase off some of the really cool features of what we can kind of do inside of Fantasy Grounds now with these kind of advanced WebM animated images. So let's jump right in and check it out. Super excited to kind of show these off today. And I believe it's going to be released this next week. I'm not exactly sure, but soon should be coming out. So this will be a little preview of that. And if we go into, it's a volcanic art package. So here we have it. And this is just some of the sampled images from that. So I'm going to actually, let's go into our images folder here and let's create a new, what do we have here? Oh, this is like some test stuff. So we can use this. So let's just go in here and delete these. And we can close this down. We really don't need that to be open. And I'm just going to maximize this here a little bit so that we have a nice little workspace. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the grid, and I'm just going to set it to 100 by 100. And I'm going to lower down this a little bit further, just so we have a kind of a framework here to work with, but we also don't have the same sort of like intrusion over our images here. Now I'm going to move this over to, let's get as much workspace as we can kind of maximize our area over here a little bit. Let's go into some of these fills, and these are like super fun. And one of the things that I think is so very impressive is our ability to use these animated images inside of our painting objects, right? And so what we can actually do is come into our painting tab. I'm going to turn off the stroke here, and we're going to switch over to the fill element. And that's what these are all about. So we have like these, and if I expand this here, you should be able to see this a little bit better. These like fields of fire. And so what we can actually do is create any sort of shape that we want to with these. We also have these kind of like volcanic rocks, and these are all seamless textures, and they're also looping. So they should be, they work exceptionally well. You see here we have a nice little like lava element. And all of the movement and whatnot is included right in this. So what we can actually do is we can use this one as our first demonstration here. We also have one that's all smoke. And so again, we can kind of create any sort of smoke shape that we wish. And we can fade out these edges and do lots of really cool, interesting kind of things with it. There's also some static rock and so forth that kind of complement a lot of these volcanic looking ones, right? So if we jump in here, I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to drop it right into our fill element. Actually, let's use this one. And then I'm just going to grab a circle here, and you can kind of see how this is going to work, right? So what I can actually do is kind of pull out a circle here, and you can see that we instantly have created this nice little element that's animated inside of our maps. Now, what we can kind of do is inside of this, we can move this around. Now, this is like free moving. If we switch over to our edit fill tab over here, which is included. So you'll notice, especially people who are unfamiliar with the framework of the image creation system inside of Fantasy Grounds, what we have here is several major tabs, and these will open up these sub tabs, which will correspond to whatever major tab you're in here, right? So we have our layers tab, our painting effects, and so on. So in each one of these, there will be these little elements that kind of come into play at the bottom here. So in our painting tab, we have the different tools that we can use inside of this, the painting aspects. And these are all things that will happen inside of the painting layers here. So if we go over to our edit fill, this gives us the access to manipulate these images a little bit further. We can move these around. We can scale this down so we can make this smaller. Or we can enlarge it. We can also rotate it so that it changes its dynamic in here a little bit. Put it back to where it was. We can also change some of the other aspects in here. So what we can actually do is change its color, for example. And doing it with these can make some really cool effects, as you can see here. And we can also change this in a multitude of different ways. So let's say we do something like this, and you can see we can get these really kind of cool, interesting elements here. But let's put this back to where it was. And we can also fade out these edges so we can get these nice kind of like soft shapes and so on. We can fade this out dramatically, and we can bring it right back. Again, we can also switch over into the edit tab over here, and then we can actually interact with these little nodules, these little nodes that we can manipulate the shape that we've kind of created here, and we can continue on down this road. So what we want to do is we come back in here. Any sort of adjustments that were made here, I can re-grab that here, and then we could add to this image, as you can see here. And this is going to make one continuous shape, as you can see here. This is just one shape that we've added to. And we can manipulate this around. This is really great because if we're going to be creating like these fields of lava, or if we were going to do like lava rivers and whatnot, or in our map, this makes it super easy to kind of do here. So if we were going to do that, let me just delete this layer, and we can come back in here. I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool to make this a little bit easier at first. We'll create a new painting layer, and we'll go back to normal here. We'll just get this started off, and I'm just going to like snap to the grid here a little bit. So we could snap something out like this, and we can go over to the add element, and we could start to build all of these different things out. And you can see that this is just a really simple way for us to kind of interact with the system. And we can actually do this with the line tool as well. So we can grab and create any shape that we wish. So if we were going to do all of these like lava little elements in through like this, we can just kind of continually build this out into whatever shape that we wish. And the cool thing that this allows us to do is to further manipulate this by going into our edit tab. And you see we have quite a few of these nodes that we can actually interact with now. So we can move this stuff around, create additional shapes, and so on. We can even, if we double click on all of these, we can simplify these. And so we can make this a much simpler shape. Basically brings it down to the minimal number of nodes that we have, these interaction nodes. And these points here. And so that we can easily manipulate this. And again, we can come back in here and we can do all of that same manipulation that we could before. And I could even fade these out. And you can see we can get this really natural kind of shape. And if we were to create another, let's say, for example, another painting layer and put this underneath, I could now, let's say, for example, and I'll grab maybe like something like this, and we could add in some additional kind of elements, right? Something like this. And we might even want to come into here, and I'm going to make these a little bit bigger here. And we can create these rather dynamic and fully animated elements without having to actually put too much work or effort into it. It's very simple and streamlined in the way that the creation system kind of happens inside of here. Again, we can manipulate these any way we want to. So if I want to change this shape and move some of this stuff around to create kind of whatever element that we want to. And we can do something as simply as this. And we have a whole bunch of different ones in here with different color elements and so on. So let's come up into here, and I'm going to hide this one for the moment. Let's create a new painting layer. And we can do the same kind of thing as before. Actually, let's switch over to the line tool here. And maybe we'll grab something like this. Or actually, let's do a few of these and kind of build up this area. And so I can start to paint out some of these other elements here, and we have the add tools already selected. So we can start to do this, and we can even go into our subtraction tool, and we can come in and start to take away these elements as well. We can even do stuff in the middle so that we can create lots of different elements here. As you can see here what we've done. And again, what I would like to do is to come into here, and we can kind of fade this out a little bit. And so you can see here, if we turn this off, we have this nice kind of gradual elements. And we can make some very complex images very quickly, right? Again, let's create another painting layer. I'm going to keep these separate for right now. We could do this all in one layer, but I'm just going to keep this a little bit separate. And then we could grab another one, for example. And again, we don't want it to be in the subtraction mode. I'll actually just go into the normal mode here. And let's build another element like this. And I'm going to grab it and I'm going to move it. Let's move it down to something like that. And then we can go back into our add and add in some additional kind of elements here. And then maybe go to subtract and remove out these bits that we don't want. We can come over here. We can move this around. I might even want to make this a bit bigger. And we can fade out these elements on the edges once again. And you can see, look at all of this complexity that we've done, all this glowing elements here. And then we can even add in some additional effects layers on top of this to enhance it even more. Pardon me while I take a little sip of my coffee here. Now let's switch back over into this one. And again, I can fade these edges out. And you can see we can get these nice little transitions here. We can add this on top of everything. Now, all of this as well, one of the really cool things that we can kind of do is we can create folders. And so this folder, I'm just going to drop it up here. And I'm going to grab all of these elements. I'm going to drop them right in here, right? And you can see we still have this stuff as well. But I'm going to, let's just delete that for right now. And we have all of these particular elements here. I'm going to go into this one. Maybe we'll increase the size of this a little bit more. Maybe do something like this. And if we turn this off, you can see we have these different elements. We're kind of layering these things on top of each other. And what we can actually do is now that we have them all in a folder, this kind of makes everything act as though it's on one layer. So this is our solution for trying to compress things down to a single layer if you were trying to collapse things together. Because what we can actually do is we can come into our layers tab, and now this actually acts as though it's all just one layer. We can rotate this all together. We can do all of the things as though it was on one particular layer here. But what we do have is still the ability to go in and manipulate them individually as well. But one of the things that we can do is we can change this. We can do color variations and interactions on a layer by layer level, but we can also do it from the folder level as well. So you can see here, if we reduce these down, like let's remove the red from this, you can see here that we can get some really kind of cool effects here, right? And really makes it kind of feel like these otherworldly elements. And we can also even change the opacity of elements as well, make things more or less opaque. But you can see we can really have some fun and manipulate some of this stuff. So if you remove the blue, you can see that we get this very like red and orangey kind of elements here. Let's put this back up to where it was originally. And let's add in some additional kind of elements. Well, let's get out of the, actually we'll showcase some of these things as we kind of progress here. And we have like these fields of fire and all of this other stuff. So let's just go up into here. Let's go into some of these decorations. And here we have lots of like fire elements, and we have some smoke elements as well. And these are kind of set up in a way that we can layer them on top of each other in addition to that. So one of the things that I do when I try to make these is make them as broad in use case as possible. And so what we can actually do here is kind of build these things up into lots of fun and interactive kind of systems here, right? So let's switch over to our stamp tool, and we'll grab maybe this little fire guy. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Now, one of the things that should be noted here, we'll make a new painting layer here, is that there's a couple of different ways and a couple of different things that should be kept in mind when we're switching between these tools. And so once I put down something that's a fill element, I can always go back in and adjust those colors per fill, right, in the edit fill layer. However, if I put something down, let's just stamp this bad boy. I think that there's a, yeah, hold on. Let's grab this guy and we'll just drop him down here real quick. Because sometimes there's a little bit of a bug that if you switch between a fill and a stamp, I've noticed that sometimes the stamp doesn't work immediately. But let's stamp this guy right in here. We get these little like fire elements, right? Now I can stamp a couple of these so that we get some different fire kind of stuff that's going on here, and so on and so forth. We could even grab some of these other ones, make this a bit bigger. And you can see as they start to layer on top of each other, we can get some really cool kind of effects that are going on here, right? Very, very cool. And we get these like natural kind of like bursts of flames that might be coming up out of like the lava areas and whatnot. I have these like volcano holes that we can use to build our own elements. We're going to actually build some stuff here in a moment. I'll show you guys how all these particular elements can kind of fit together exceptionally well. Now what we can actually do is on top of that, we have all of these like smoke elements as well. And these again are all looping and they're all set up in a particular way so that you can just like throw them on here and they're going to work, right? So here we have something like this. We have some continuous fire as well that we can kind of throw down on here. But let's grab this element. We can kind of drop this down in here. Let's make another painting layer. And one of the things that I thought was really cool is we can darken this up, right? We can make this like super black if we want to. And we can stamp this down. You can see how much that. But then what we can do is layer some of these lighter ones on top. So we can get all kinds of really cool effects as it kind of goes on here. But I'm actually going to use one. We're going to build out some ones here. So here we have like this continuous little smoke element here. It's going to be going something like this. And this is a little bit more transparent. So what we can do is we can make this a bit darker here. And I'm going to stamp this, maybe rotate it, change its size, and stamp that. And then we can make this a little bit lighter here. Stamp this around, something like that. And look at all of that motion and action that we kind of have going on here. Now, like I said, we have to, and we can even kind of break this down so you can really see how these are going to interact. And these are things that you can paint onto any map, right? So if you have a already existing pre-made map and whatnot, you can add these elements on top of it to add a lot of motion and interaction here. So what we can actually do in these kind of scenarios, and one of the things that I like to do by separating it into particular layers, I don't always do this, depending on what we're trying to create here. But once we put something down, and you can see we can also make these any colors we want to. So we could do this. One of the things that I've been experimenting with is using these kinds of things for like in alchemist labs and whatnot, where you can get like the kind of like cool vats of stuff, interaction and whatnot, right? So we can get these really neat color combinations here. Super cool stuff. But as I said, once you've put down these elements, right, then you have no way of changing their color except for in the layers, and that's going to change all of the layers, right? And so what this is actually really cool about is that we could paint out all the fire that we want to, and then we could change them if we put them all on the same layer and change their color to whatever we wish, right? And if we turn this back on, you can see that if we wanted to, we would be able to add lots of like these really interesting kind of effects here. So let's change some of these parameters here. maybe mix and match these a little bit. See, we can get these like really cool kind of elements here. And on the same thing, we could do the same with the smoke itself, right? So we could come over here if we wanted to make all of our smoke have a little bit more elements to it. Super cool stuff. And now if we were to go over onto the same tab, right, because we're changing this on the layers tab and not by an individual basis, now everything that we add to that is going to be adjusted. And you should know that the way that it works, it's additive. So it's going to add to the colors that are already there, right? So if we go back into our fills over here, we grab, let's turn off this stroke, and we'll grab this guy. So now if I paint out, let's just grab a circle here. This will be easier. And then we can move over and change the size of this. As you can see, we have this like field of fire here. And you can see it's going to be adjusted to the same colors based off of the layer itself. What number is it? Oh, I have no idea. I've been doing this for Fantasy Grounds for about 3 years or 4 years, something like that. So it's up there in number. And again, because we're doing this in the fill layer, we can come over here and we can edit this fill, and we could bring this down, like fade this out on the edges. And we can even come in here and we can change this. We can manipulate this into any shape that we wanted to. What this is really cool for, and what I think it's going to be really interesting to use, like we can do these like fields of fire now, right? We could do, let's say if you had, and you can also come in here and do adjustments on this as well, right? On the color wise, and we can even lower down its opacity. So you can see here, you could create like this kind of like overlay, fire and whatnot. But one of the cool things I think that this might be interesting to use on is if you have like a building and you want to do like, you could do lots of different things, traps, all sorts of like fire. You could fill up rooms full of fire and so on. We can always come back into the layers tab itself, and let's say we come down here. This is the fire layer here, and then we have these elements here. We can come back in and we can put these back to its original element as well. And we can come in if we go back into our layers tab, and let's actually go into the edit, and I could just click this and delete that. And so we have really a whole bunch of different kind of control as we manipulate through here. We can even come in here, and if I wanted to select these, we could just move these. And this is inside of the layer itself, and we can move them individually. But I can also come back into the layers tab, and we can move this as a whole too. It's like the entire layer can kind of get moved around, as you can see here. So does anyone have any questions on any of that stuff before we start to build like a little environment with some of these? Oh, the one other thing that I should show off before we get moving here, I think is this is a pretty cool element as well. So let's switch over into here, and I'll just grab this. And what we can actually do is like in these build out in exactly the same kind of way, these kind of like fields of smoke and whatnot. So again, let's increase the size of this a bit. And we could fade out those edges. And so you can make like these big elements of like smoke or fog or whatever you want to do, because we could lower down the opacity here a little bit, and we can layer these over lots of images. You can see here we could grab this and we could move it over, and you can see we could create like some really cool kind of like ground fog or something in maps now with this kind of stuff. Or we could increase our, let's switch back over. So yeah, some super interesting and fun elements that will be getting added in. And if you have the art subscription, of course, you're going to get all of this stuff for included in that. You get all of the new releases, and so we come up with stuff every month. But yeah, if you guys have no other questions, let's delete all of this stuff. We're just going to delete that, and we'll start building a little area over here. And we do have this swamp cemetery that we started last time that we're going to maybe jump back into once we complete a little area over here. But I thought that this would be super fun to do. We also have inside of here some different kind of elements that we can kind of use, these kind of like embers and whatnot that are kind of going around. So it should be really, really fun. So there's a couple of different ways that we can always approach these map creations. And especially if we're going to be doing something that is divided between two major elements. So right here, we're going to have like this volcanic rock, and then we're going to have like lava, right? So those are our two main areas that we're going to be using. Now, what I like to do, depending on the scenario, is I will create, depending on what is going to be the majority of, I will put that down as my base, right? So if it's going to be mostly rock, then I'm going to use a rock kind of base first, right? And so what we can do is if we were to come into our fill elements, we could do a completely static kind of element here, which is just like this nice lava rock texture that I made. Or we could use one of these like more animated kind of ones, which has a lot of these like dynamic kind of stuff. But I think what I want to do, especially in this kind of creation, is I want to have good contrast between the two elements, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use like a static rock and then active kind of lava on top. And we can kind of build up this in a couple of different layers. I'll show you guys how you can kind of maximize that feeling of how this is all going to kind of go together here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch over into the fill element over here. And let's just drag out a nice big area here, something like this, right? This is a pretty large area over here. And I'm going to go over in here and I'm just going to make these rocks a bit bigger. Maybe we'll rotate them a little bit. We're not going to worry. It's going to be a little bit repeating because this is a pretty large area that we're going to be working on here, right? Maybe we'll shrink it down a little bit. Something like this. Yeah, something like that. So you can see we got these nice little like rock kind of textures and whatnot. So like these ins and outs and whatnot. And then what I'll do is I'll just create a new painting layer. I could do it on exactly the same layer, but I'm going to do it on its own layer just in case I want to do some adjustments on the layer basis. And so what I'll do is switch back over. I think we'll use the ellipse tool. Sure, let's do that. And we can drag and drop this in here. And what I'm going to do is just kind of create some basic shapes over the top of this. And this is going to be my lava as it's kind of coming through. And we can create some little rivers and whatnot. I'm going to create another painting layer first. And inside of here, let's go to our decorations. And we'll go over to our stamp tool. And let's grab this guy. And I'm going to make this guy a bit bigger. This is going to be like a little volcano over here. And maybe we'll do like another little small one like next to it, like this. And you're going to see how this is going to work because it's over the top of it. And we're going to do our lava on the bottom here. So now all we have to do is switch back over. It's going to remember that we have that loaded up right there, right? And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag out a nice little bit underneath here. And you can see we have some nice little lava down there. And I can do another one down here. Now, because I have this set up in the normal tab here, the overlap, that means that these are not going to be connected. But I could, if I go to the add, I could connect to them. But these are going to be inherently by themselves. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to drag out some of these shapes over here, right? So I'm going to do something like this, and then I'm going to switch over to the add element and maybe drag something out like this. And I think I'm going to switch over to the line tool. And then what I'll do is just kind of pull out some shapes like this. And we can kind of just build out some little areas over here. And maybe we'll do some and I'm just kind of having fun, moving some stuff around, not trying to think about it too much. Just trying to create some interesting little areas down here. And anytime that I want to remove something, all I have to do is switch back over to my subtraction area here, and I can take these out, right? We can kind of build some things out. Maybe I want to do like a little bit out of the middle over here. We can switch back over to the add again now, and we could build out some other areas here. I think what we'll do is we'll do like a little bit like this, and we'll extend this out. And so what we're actually doing here is we're creating like, these are going to be like the areas like safety maybe. And then this will be like our dangerous elements of lava here. So before I go too much further, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch over into the edit tab. And you can see we have a lot of these elements here. And so I can do a few different things. If I wanted to continue manipulating, I can grab some of these and drag them out and do all this stuff. That's interesting. Let's just delete that. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to double click on all of these, and I'm just going to simplify this. We're going to make this a lot simpler. We'll change some of these elements. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fade this out a little bit, right? We got a pretty complex kind of shape here, but I'm going to smooth out some of these things, I think. We can even delete that one. And we can kind of continually go around and adjust this shape to whatever is that we want it to be. And when they come back into here, what I can actually do is fade this out a little bit. So maybe not that much, just a little bit. So what we do is we have this neat little interaction. And again, we're going to smooth out some of these things so it seems a little bit more natural. You're probably never going to have like sharp angles in these kind of events. So having these, and then this is a little bit too round over here. So maybe we'll stretch out some of this stuff. And so what we've done is we've created this really much more natural kind of element. And I think what I'm actually going to do is we'll move this over a little bit and maybe even make it a little bit larger. And I like to do these adjustments after I create my shape, because you can only add to an image if you're adding exactly the same thing. So if you make any sort of adjustments, you want to make sure that you use this little sample painting and grab those adjustments, because you can see if I grab this and I do this, it's going to tell me I've got a fade to it. And if I've done any rotation, it's going to grab all of that information so that I can continually work in that same area. If you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to add to it. If you've made any sort of adjustments, that is. So you want to make sure that, or at least my workflow, is that I will create my shape first, my basic shape, and then I'll come in and do all of these adjustments after the fact, so that I don't have to contend with anything along those lines. And this is looking pretty good here. Now on the same upper layer up here, actually we might even want to do it on an additional layer like right here. And you can see that this is looking pretty good. It's very dynamic. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But here I'm going to add in some of these additional kind of elements, right? So what we can do is we can go back over into our stamp mode and grab some of these nice little static elements here. And these are going to be all of those bits that we might want to have. So, or we're going to get this like this nice contrast between this like slight fade element on our lava here, and then we can have some much more rigid these kind of bits that kind of stick out. And you can see that this matches up with that static kind of background really well. And we can stamp some of this stuff out, and we can kind of create these little like outcroppings that are going to seem even a little bit more natural. We might even want to do like some stone elements out here in addition. We do some little ones as well. We also have some that are they have like these bright bits through them, and like they're freshly created or whatnot. Excuse me. This might be a good area here, and we might even want to do some like here in the middle. And you can see that these like layer on top of each other exceptionally well. And what we end up creating here is, and we can even unlock our aspect lock ratio, and we can change the shape of these even a bit more. That's a little bit too much, but we can do something like that. And we can even come in and maybe I'll grab these and move them like over like this. And what this kind of creates is you can see we get these nice little faded elements. Like this is kind of where it gradual transition into it. And you can actually come over into here and do some like much more well, you get the contrast right between these hard edges and these gradual edges, because we can fade that kind of stuff off here, right? So as we begin to paint these things out, we can interact with these in many, many different ways. So I'll just add in a few of these other ones over here, and then we can kind of progress into some of the more fun stuff here. Let's grab some of these different kind of rock shapes. Maybe we'll do something like this. And we'll do a couple of other ones. We'll do something like maybe some along this edge here and do it like fairly quickly here. And I think what we'll actually do is let's come in here. I'm going to widen this out a little bit. And let's move these kind of along here, change the shape slightly. Make this seem a little bit more interesting over here. Awesome. And what we can actually do from this standpoint, right, we can come back down. I'm going to actually create another painting layer, and I'm going to drop this right in here, right between these. And we can go back into one of these other fills here. And let's grab something that is a little bit more, maybe something like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this just to the outside here, right? I want it to be above this rock layer, but beneath this other more dynamic kind of layer here. And we can kind of create this like this kind of like bleeds out a little bit more. Maybe we'll use something like this. It's a little bit more interactive here. So again, I'm just going to switch over here, and we're going to drop this right into here. And I'm just going to kind of go along the outside here, right? And we'll just kind of build this around. And we don't have to be too exact. We can kind of, as you can see here. And I can just double click this, and maybe we'll just move this around a little bit, get this a little bit more where I want it to be. You can see what we do is we create this a little bit additional kind of stuff around the outside here. Now again, I'm going to simplify all these strokes, so this is going to make it a little bit easier for me. But here we have like this, it's kind of like really cool like bleed out. And what I'll actually do on here is let's go into our edit tab here, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. I want that to be a little bit more dynamic, and you can see we get these nice little like it's almost like heat elements and little bits that are kind of like flying off of it. And so we could lower down that opacity a little bit if we wanted it to be less kind of overbearing here. But we can also I'm gonna remove all of that blue from there, or some of it anyway, and maybe some of that green will make it a little bit more or a little bit closer to this element over here. And then again, I'm going to fade out that a bit. So I want that to be a nice little like fade as it kind of moves out through there. And now what I can do is like come back into here, and maybe what I want to do is pull these out a little bit more. And grab this stuff, and we can move this stuff around. And this is what's so fun about making these elements inside of Fantasy Grounds, is that we have this kind of constant ability to manipulate and change things. So as we begin to create, right, as this creation process begins, we can delete this stuff. We can make this a little bit more. We can probably even delete these ones in here as well. So this kind of just fills this up. Is that it gives us the freedom to really be creative. We can kind of continually build, and you can see like this is starting to look very dynamic. Some really cool elements there as it kind of transitions around. And I think what we'll do is we can even come back into here, and we can fade that out a little bit more so that we get, and as we do that, we might need to adjust this, right? We might want to pull this out a little bit further, but we get these like nice gradual kind of transitions. And we can even come back in here and fade this a little bit more as well. So if we switch back over, so again, we're going to get these nice gradual things here. And we might need to, when we make these adjustments, we might need to come in and make some little minor movements with our points here. So it's kind of like this balance back and forth. See, so I'll probably just delete these, and we'll get this like this. Let's get rid of this one. We don't need it. And we can always come back in, move these things around, find where they're going to be kind of the most, yeah, something like this. Yeah, it's looking very, very cool. And because we're doing these on all of these separate layers, right, we have all of these different elements here. What we can actually do is we can add in things underneath, we can add things over the top, and we can kind of create all of these elements as we kind of progress here. Some neat stuff there. I think that looks pretty good. What do you guys think? All right, so now let's add in some additional kind of elements to this, right? We can do a lot of different stuff, and there's a lot of different ways that we can interact with the system. And one of the things that I found is that we can actually use some of the effects layers to greatly enhance the way that the lighting system kind of feels, right? We can do it with lighting, and we can also do it with just straight up effects layers. So we got all these different tools that we can kind of manipulate these things in particular ways. One of the things that is a neat aspect of something like this is that it gives off a lot of light, right? So a lot of this stuff is going to be almost like a glowing kind of element to it, right? And so if we come in, I think we'll do it, we might as well just do it on the top here. Let's create a new effects layer. We can come into here, and now let's go down to our adjust colors. And one of the things that we can do with this, right, is if we increase the red and we increase the green, that's going to make a yellow for us, right? And depending on how these go, we can make it orange and whatnot. And then if we create a mask, What the mask does is it's only going to show it through a particular area. See, like this? And if I hold down Shift and Alt, I can remove it. What I can actually do is start to paint out some of these like areas like this, right? So let's do this, but we can blur this out to make it feel as though, and we can increase this, right? We can do this dramatically if we want to, and we can create these like glowing kind of elements. So let's bring this back down, and if we were to create this, these kind of bits like this, right? As we begin to manipulate this, you can see we could even create our own little like glowing kind of stuff here. And we can blur this out dramatically, or we can keep it a little bit more refined, and then we can kind of come in here and do and see we can actually augment this stuff even more. Make it feel as hot as you guys want to in through here. And we can drastically increase this if we want to. We could crank this stuff right up if we want to. Maybe bring that back down. And all of this is very adjustable, right? So to do this a little bit more feeling natural, what we would actually do is these little like specular kind of elements, and maybe we make this feel like it's like super hot. So you guys can actually come in here and add as much detail as you wanted to. You might even do some here, and we'll do, see, as you can see here, that looks, feels pretty good, right? So now obviously you guys don't have to go to this extent if you were, but the options are always there for you. This one should be a little bit more. Very cool. And we'll just do a little bit of this stuff around just to make it feel as though it's a little bit kind of going on there. We might even want to do like in here. I'm just going to break this up a little bit so we get these. Makes it seem as though that there's a lot of like shape and whatnot that's kind of reflecting off of. Probably be like here. We'll keep some of that dark. Might even want to do a little bit like here. Adds a little bit more color to the elements, right? So I think what would be fun is we have this rock layer. Now if we come down to this layer here, we go over to our stamp tool. Let's go into the these decorations here. I'm going to grab some of these like fire elements, maybe something like this. And we can do like these like bits of fire that kind of come out underneath here. And we can kind of do this one as well. Yeah, this stuff is fun. And we can even do like little bits here and there. Yeah, very cool. It's very dynamic, lots of stuff going on. And now I think what we'll do is we'll add in some smoke elements. So let's, we can actually go up. I'm going to go up above this adjusted colors tab, and let's grab some of these elements. Maybe we'll grab something like this, and we'll put this guy, I'm going to lower down its opacity. I'm also going to make it a bit darker, and we'll rotate it over. I'm actually going to squash it a little bit. So let's do this, and let's bring this down to maybe something like 5. So it's a little bit more. Actually, let's make it something more like 7 there. Not quite. I'm just going to stamp this guy right here, and then we'll make a little bit lighter of a one. So we get this kind of effect here. I think what we're going to do, actually, let's remove that one, and let's grab this guy here. I'm just going to rotate it, and I'm going to lower down its opacity, and I'm just going to start moving them out like this, and lower down the opacity and move it out like this. So now we get this nice kind of like trail of smoke that kind of comes off there through there. And maybe we'll do some minor ones. I'll increase the opacity here a little bit as well. I'm going to make this a bit smaller and rotate it so that it doesn't seem so much is going on. But now we've kind of put together a pretty cool element here. We could do the same thing. We could come over. We could do some smoke elements kind of coming off of here. One of the cool things that we could actually do is, if we wanted to, maybe even on the same tab, is we could switch back over into our fills. And I'll go over here. Let's turn our stroke off, and we'll grab this guy. And this is a like a smoke fill. And what we could do is we could create some nice shapes. And we can switch over to our add. And remember, we're going to so maybe we're going to have a whole bunch of like smoke coming up, right? With all of this movement and whatnot kind of going on. So now that we have our shape, what we can do is we can come back over here, and we can double click this, and we're going to simplify that, make that a little bit easier for us. We can come over in here, and we can fade out those edges. And we're going to do some adjustment in through here. And then I can lower down that alpha here a little bit. Kind of manipulate some of this stuff around. I'll get rid of some of these like little choke points here. And then we can come back in and we can fade this out a little bit more on the edges. So we get these nice little transitions. So you can create lots and lots of movement as this kind of progresses around, right? This is probably a little bit too much in through here. So what I'll do is just come back in and delete that. And we can come back over into our stamps. And I would probably be more likely to just to kind of like stamp some of these things around, especially in these kind of areas where this stuff's kind of happening over here. And I really like this way of like lowering down the opacity, rotating it, lowering down its opacity, moving it out a little bit. And it really feels as though like you get these cool kind of like fading off of some of these like smoke elements. And we can add this into some of these like little fiery areas, you know, maybe even do like some larger ones. And it really kind of feels like this super dynamic lower down that opacity. Maybe we'll even make it like quite a bit larger in some of these areas. We could do something like that. Quite a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, do you guys have any questions about anything that I've done so far? Anything that you would like to see a little bit further clarification on, or? And I'm just going to continue to do a little bit of adjustments on some of this stuff. I like the way that one lava element can kind of like fade into the other one. All right, yeah. So there's lots of cool stuff. Oh, that's okay. Ask away. Any sort of question, I'm happy to do my best to kind of help you answer. So what do you mean by shift the walls easily? Are they painted walls? Are they kind of walls are you talking about? So if we do a wall brush, right? If we do a painted layer here, and let's take just like a simple kind of wall. All right, so we have this like stone wall. And I put this into my stroke area here, right? And what this will do is I can just paint out a wall here, right? Oh, so you're talking about the line of sight itself. So what you're saying is that let's say we have a wall like this, and we go into our line of sight, and what you have is somebody has done the line of sight like here, and you want it to be over. It's probably like a pre-made map with line of sight built into it. So depending on how complex the image is, right? Depending on how it is, it could be. It could be a little bit cumbersome. Whoops. Let's Control Z, because probably really the only way to do it is to. I wonder why that's not moving them both. There it is. Is to like move them manually, but depends, right? So if it's simpler, one of the things that you can actually do. So let me demonstrate this. Let's grab a map. If we go into our into the first interior map pack, in our backgrounds, I believe there's some pre-made maps here, and I think they have line of sight. So here we have one, right? So let's just grab this guy and drop him in here. You can see this has got all the line of sight kind of built into it. And again, it's like you're saying, it's right here, right? So yeah, well, it depends on how you want to kind of approach it, and depending on how complex the shape is, because we have this really handy thing in Fantasy Grounds where you can automatically generate line of sight from painted elements, right? So I'm just going to we'll come in here, and I'm just going to delete this stuff, okay? So I'm going to come in here and make sure I'm in my line of sight tab, and I got all of this stuff, and I'm just going to hit delete and get rid of all of it. So this no longer has line of sight, right? I've removed it all. And let's say I wanted to have these elements in line of sight. I will have to do a little bit of work, but what I can actually do is I can come into my painting tab, and I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to do it with a regular painted line here. And I'm going to make it white so I can see it really easy, because this, or I can make it yellow, or yeah, sure, let's make it red. So this is going to be really easy for us to see, right? And I can make it whatever size that I want to. And what I can actually do, especially if I'm using the line tool, is I can just start to paint this out. And let's create a new painting layer. And so if I hold this down, and I can hold down Shift, and it will automatically snap to 45 and 90 degree angles. So I can just come over here. I don't want it to be a shape. I want it to be a straight line here. So it's, yeah, I think that this, oh, and I want to have mitered corners, I think. Yeah. And so, and I can also hold down Control and snap to the grid. So if I hold down Control, I can snap to the grid, and I can start to build out these elements here. And if I want to, I can just paint just like this, right? And then I can come in, and if I do, I think it's add. I think the add will work. And I can do all of this stuff. And if I want to leave gaps, I can. And you can see how quickly I can kind of like paint this stuff out, right? Because I'll add my doors in after the fact. So it depends on the situation that you're actually in here, and I'm just going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I might want to grab a circle real quick, right? Because if I grab this ellipse tool, what I can actually do is I can hold down Alt and Shift, and it's going to grow out from the center there, so I can quickly kind of just do this. Oh, whoops. Let's hit Control Z. Let's just do a new one for this. Alt and Shift, we'll pull this out, boom. And so here we have all of these different elements, right, that I just quickly kind of painted out. And you can do this with this as well. So if you have to just like paint along any sort of shape, you can do this. And now the magic of this is this is kind of like the quick way that you can set up your shape, is that we can now switch over to line of sight, and we have this duplicate paint as walls, and boom, it'll do all of this stuff for us. It'll instantly kind of create this, and this is going to be in the middle, kind of where you want it to be. And then what we can do is if we switch over to the doors and we grab our rectangle tool, you can see we got this little trim. And what we can do is when we do this, it's just going to cut out our doors instantly for us. So we can do these like super quick as well. You can just kind of like build this stuff out. And we can delete this now, right? Because we don't even need this. This was just the thing that we were using to generate this line of sight. And as we begin to, we can very quickly begin to build this stuff. Yeah. So you can use your painting tools to be a really good go-between when you're trying to create this stuff. So here we can do all this stuff like super fast, right? See, I missed a little bit there, but that's okay. But see, boom, and we can cut all of this stuff out. And so you can use all of those tools to kind of build all of this stuff together and do it like very, very quickly. And if I were to like paint this out, we can do something that's a little bit more difficult here. And let's delete this, and we can close this down. I'll actually go into my I think it's this one. Yeah, we'll just delete that. And let's find something that's a little bit more. I think in the underground art package, there's something that's a little bit rougher here. We can kind of, yeah, this one. So let's create a new image record from this. And we'll turn off our lights here, and we'll go over to our line of sight. You can see here's our line of sight, and it's kind of all over the place, right? It's a little bit on the inside of where we'd probably want it to be. Now, again, let's come in here, and I'm just going to delete all of this line of sight. So it no longer has any line of sight. And we'll create a new painting layer. And I'm going to come into here, and again, I'm just going to use the regular. I don't need an image or anything. I'm just going to grab it, make it something that I want to easily be able to see, and I can just hold down my mouse, and I can start to paint this out, right? And I can be a little bit rough about it. It doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to bring it down here, and maybe we'll drop it like there. And then I can click, drag it across, and then I can hold down my mouse button. If you have a tablet or something, I do this. I do this on my tablet with like a graphics tablet with a pen, and it's super fast and super easy. And then maybe we'll just snap it here and go here, and then hold down my mouse. Now this is going to create a lot of occluders. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to simplify our stroke first. Bring this down. I'm going to grab it something like this, bring it around, and see we're doing a little bit on the inside here, and we did it, right? We kind of just painted that all the way around here. Now we're going to go into this tab here, and you're going to see we're going to have quite a lot of things here. So I'm just going to select them all, And I'm going to simplify that, right? So we're going to kind of like pull this all together. And now we can go over to our line of sight and we can duplicate that, and boom, we've got that all made. So if we hide this, you can see it's exactly in the center of what we were creating before. And this is something that's a little bit harder to do in here, right? So if I don't have the ability to just drag this out as easily for me personally. And what this does is it allows me with the painting layer, because it's going to put an occluder in there. We'll just select all these. It's going to put an occluder wherever those little nodes are to move the walls around. And so it gives you the ability to kind of manipulate that before you put this stuff, connect this. And so, but you can still come back in here and move these around. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, I am going to take a quick break here, and then we'll come back. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into our swamp cemetery, and we're going to start finishing that up. And we'll be able. I'm just going to get rid of the this one. We can delete that. We'll finish this up with the time that we have left, or at least we'll work on it for a little while. And so if you guys want to just hang out for a minute, I'll be right back. So thanks, everybody. All right, and we're back. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We're going to dive into this and start to make some advancements here. You can see we have a pretty good base here. We got lots of different textures and whatnot, as you can kind of see. Some color variations and whatnot. One of the big things that I think is super important when you're starting to do this stuff is having these bits of variations as we kind of look around, and you can see that this really helps to break up a lot of the environment here. I'm actually going to probably concentrate on here. I'm only going to be streaming till about 5 o'clock today. So we got a little bit of time left, but we should be able to get quite a bit done here. And the first thing that I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to work on this fade off here and a little bit more interaction between the outside area here and our road. But you can see we've got quite a lot going on here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the ground down here, right? And you can see that this is all of that base elements here. And if I go into my painting tab, I should be able to just grab this and, well, that's not exactly what I wanted to do. So let me just grab this. We've got lots of different elements on top here. I'm going to find a little area over here that should be able to, that doesn't have some sort of textured element layered over the top. Maybe down here. Let's try this. Yeah, so what it will do is it's going to grab this, and you can see if we switch back over, and it's going to have the fade element already attached to it. If I want to change that, I can just put it back down to 0. But basically what it is it grabs any sort of color information that I've changed this to, right? As well as any sort of any adjustments that I did. So whatever I do now, it's going to match up. And what I'm actually going to do is, let's just switch over to the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to kind of do something like this, where it's kind of going to fade out on the edges here. And now what I can do is I can kind of interact with this. And what I'm going to do is just get this base down here. Excuse me. And now I can grab these elements and I can kind of pull this out. And you can see that this is going to match right up to everything that I've kind of already got going on here in the background. So it's going to kind of seamlessly do this. And this is this element here, right? So maybe we're going to pull it here. And if I grab this stuff, nope, I don't want that part. I just want these. And we're going to pull this stuff out because of that fade, and we're going to get some nice little interactions here. Moving this around here. That doesn't look like it's anything, so we can just delete that. And I'm just going to pull this in so it fades in with these other elements. And you can see we got this nice little element here that kind of fades. And we could do a lot with this. We can kind of create a lot of different elements from this, right? And in the same kind of vein, what I can do is I can switch over to this line tool, for example, right? And we can make this pretty complex if we want to. And if I want to add a fade to it, I could do the same amount of fade, but I don't know exactly what I want to do yet. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to kind of come in here and I'm just going to start drawing some shapes as this kind of interacts here, right? Kind of comes in and out. And you can see we get this kind of these different kind of elements as it kind of moves around through here. And we can come in and we can move this stuff around, and again we can fade this out a little bit. So if you ever get this, right, like you get this kind of like strange thing that's going on here, I found that this is because if we go over in here and we click on this and we reverse this, so it kind of reverses it going in the other direction, and now it'll fade out. It'll work. Sometimes if those things are going in the wrong direction, the fade is thinking it's happening on the outside. And so you can just go in there and adjust that if that ever actually happens to you. And the other thing that we're going to do is let's simplify these so that they're much easier for us to kind of contend with. And we can grab this whole thing and kind of do this. Open this up a little bit, and then we can do the same here. Let's simplify that. And excuse me, and you can see how much more this kind of interacts with the environment, right? We get this. You want to have some like these rough areas, but then you also want to have like these areas that are. It's almost as though the outside area is kind of like encroaching on it. You know, there's a lot of interaction between the environments. We could even pull this down as well. Yeah, don't forget you can play with your shapes here. You can do a lot of really cool and inventive kind of stuff as the stuff interacts with each other. And you can put in as much detail as you want, right? There's lots of different things that you can kind of do in these kind of scenarios. So never feel as though that you know your work is wasted, because I feel as though that the narration of these events, right, like what you pick up on, there's just so much into it, right? And we could even come in if we wanted to continue down this road here. We might want to create another like painting layer, like right in here. And one of the great things is if we go into our assets, let's go over to the Winter Art Pack. The Winter Art Pack is a great universal elements because of the way that the color system works. Anything that is white or gray, we can kind of adjust those colors to whatever we wish, right? And we can go into our brushes here. One of the things that we kind of have here are like these ridge mounds. And this is like a super easy, like even like this winter road, right? This winter road, we could use this in any sort of scenario. So let me just switch over here. We'll turn off this fill. We'll switch over to our stroke. And let's drop this in here. What we can actually do from here is we can grab our color picker and we can actually pick up any color we want. So maybe we'll do something like this. Right now we've matched these colors up because this kind of has that base there, right? And if we wanted to, we might even want to lower down the opacity of this a little bit. But you can see that this is actually like the ridges, like almost like there's like wheel tracks here, right? So we can kind of use this. And we could paint this in over the top. This one's a little bit too small. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And you can see we can start to create a lot of variation here, right? I'd probably even lower down that opacity a little bit more. So I'm just going to come back in here. Let's double click that and lower down that opacity a little bit more and use this as like this. Oh yeah, that's good. And let's build this out as it kind of comes around and it goes down through here. And that's a nice kind of ridge in there. Also, I think that this kind of makes it seem a little bit more like mud, right? Because we're doing this like swampy area. So you want these like ridges. You want these kind of things. And what we could actually do is we could do the same thing. I might even want to go in here and grab this hexadecimal code, and we can hit Control C and OK. And then drop this in here. And then we can come into here and we can hit Control V. And now we've done the same thing again, right? We've done this, but we might even want to change this a little bit more, right? And I might want to change this. Let's make it a little bit more narrow. Something like that, right? Let's, well, we don't want it that dark. maybe, no, I think it was good. Let's hit just cancel. And this is going to be like a nice little like ridge for us, right? And so let's say we wanted to, in the same kind of way, well, we wanted to go the other direction. So I'm just going to flip it. And we could create like these like ridges along the outside edge here, right? This seems a little bit too much for me. So let's double click on this and delete that whole element there. So what we can do is we go into our decorations. We have some that are just like these kind of elements, like here, and some other things. And again, we can grab something like this, right? We'll go into our stamp tool and we'll just drop this right in here. And again, we can hit Control V, and that's going to change that to these same kind of elements. And again, what we'll do is let's turn off our aspect lock ratio, right? So this is, we want to change our width here to make it a little bit more narrow, maybe even more than that. And then we can kind of just like stamp around some of these things. We can kind of layer them on top of each other, change their size. We can even do some like further stuff like inside here, like this. Maybe even lower down the opacity on some of this. So it gets, you can see how, look how natural that looks. It looks really good. And we can accentuate some of these, like these ridges, right? These things that are layered on top of each other here. And we can lower down that opacity a little bit and kind of fade these out. And I'm doing that by holding down A and using my mouse wheel. That'll change. Yeah, each one can be purchased separately. That's right. Thanks, Paulette. So you can just buy whichever ones that you wish, but you can also get all of them with the art subscription. And we can grab some of these other elements as well. All of this stuff. Let's go back here, maybe one of these. And again, we can make sure that we have this hexadecimal code, because this is going to continually make sure that all of this stuff kind of just fits together, right? See, we can just move this down and maybe do like a nice little ridge like this. Lower down that opacity, change its size, and we can add these into some of these elements, and you can see how much variety we can start to kind of put into this stuff. We might even want to do like these kind of like doubled up areas like this. And you can see how much we adds to like that feeling, right? Just even a small amount of detail can really add a lot of narration to this. Because if we turn this off, right, you can see we've taken this like very blank kind of road, and then boom, you can see now it's got all of this textured elements to it. It kind of has its own like story to tell, right? And I find that super interesting. And now what we can do, let's go in and start to add in some of these other elements. We can do the same kind of stuff even off of the side here, right? So let's do this. I think we'll make this one a little bit more akin to something like this. I can lower down the opacity here. Maybe, and we can add in some additional kind of stuff like this as it's yeah, all of these kind of elements here can be really easily used. We got, this is kind of like an overlay. And this is really great for like textures and whatnot. So again, if we wanted to come in here and lower down that opacity, you can see we can create a little bit of like layered texture and whatnot. We can even make this a little bit darker if we wanted to. We can make it light. Excuse me. And one of the things that I really like in this is the effects area here. So if we grab some of this stuff, these work exceptionally well for creating like a variety. So let's do something like add in a little bit of like redness out here, lower down that opacity quite a bit. And on this layer here, we can kind of layer some over the road here a little. Lower down that opacity a little bit more. Excuse me. Yeah, I think that is true. I think that Dungeon Alchemist was on yesterday on FG Friday and said that they had just added support for BP8, which is what we support, and so you'll be able to export those and bring them in. Let's do some little like stones and stuff, I think, right? Right, Pebbles? No. Let's do rocks. Is that what we want? Or maybe debris? Yeah, maybe something like this. We can bring these down. I'm going to make them a bit darker. Or maybe something like this. What is this one in? Medieval buildings. Maybe we'll do something like this. This might work pretty well too. Let's experiment here a little bit. We might want to do winter again. Like these kind of work really well. And drop some of this stuff in. I think what I want, excuse me, keep having a little thing there. I think what I want to do is add in some little like plants and things. We'll start to add in like a little bit more detail here. I think if we type in ground plant, we have some these little guys, or I think if we go into the abandoned places, I think has a lot of nice little plants here. So we go into nature. Yeah, like this kind of stuff. So we can kind of switch gears here a little bit. I think what we'll do is we'll just lower down the opacity a little bit. I don't know if I want them to be so, yeah, something like this. And if you ever want, and this is a really good little thing here. Let's open up our image creation area over here. And I'm going to go over into my painting tab here. I'm going to turn off my stroke. I'm going to go to Eclipse and we go to fill. And I'm going to put this in the fill element, right? So we're going to grab something like this. And if you ever want to just extract maybe one of these, right? So maybe we want this guy. So all we have to do is pull this in. And this is why I use the ellipse tool for this, is so that we can kind of pull in here. And then these ones we can just delete here. Now what I've done is I basically isolated this. Right? And I can move this over, and I could do all kinds of things with this. I can change its color here and whatnot if I wanted to. But now what I've done is I've taken this little grouping and I've extracted one. Now I can just go to export. And it's going to get a little pop-up that comes up here. I'm going to export this as a PNG. And I'm going to just like single flower. We're going to save, and I'm saving this into my campaign folder. And then I can close this down. And if I refresh this now, you can see we make lots of things in here all the time. And I go ahead here. And now we have a single version of this, so I can just grab this. And maybe I'll lower this down a little bit. We can start to add in some of these like little details. And then we can mix and match this with the other ones as well if we want. You can also go in the opposite direction, right? So if we go back to our over here, right? We could And a good way to do this is we can go back into our stamp here. Let's do this. We could stamp a couple of these around now. If we go back into the abandoned places, and maybe we want to, add in some different sizes here. And we could add in other elements as well. If we wanted to add in some other plants and whatnot, we could totally do that. But from here, what we can do is exactly the same kind of thing as well. So we can export this. And again, I'm going to do PNG. And we can do this as multi-flowers. And now if we go back to our campaign and we refresh this, now we have a bunch of ones. Seems like it cut that one off. Let me see here. Maybe we just move this in a little bit. Let's try that again. As you can see here, it cut off one of those ones, which isn't that big of a deal, but we'll try this again. And now you can see that this gives us a snapshot of what this is. And so here we have it again. Now we can refresh this. And there it is, all fixed. And here we can come back over here. So now we have a single one, and then we have this like larger one. And again, I'm going to lower down the opacity a little bit, so it's just not so. And now I can start to build out some of these areas a little bit faster. And now here, if we go, it looks like maybe like these ones now seem a little bit out of place here. So we can always come back in and just like grab these and maybe move them over here or delete them. We'll move these out to be more like these kind of like water plants. Yeah, that looks pretty good in there. And now we can add like little kind of like shadows and whatnot that will greatly enhance how that's going to feel. And I'm going to start to move some of this stuff down. And again, we can grab some single ones if we want to. Gonna lower down that opacity and maybe just drop a couple like out here on the road. Some things that are kind of like poking out from underneath. So let's go, I'm going to create, let's go all the way up to the top here, and we'll create a new painting layer. And I'm going to do this, some shadows and stuff now. So I'm going to grab this, it's just this white kind of faded ball here. Oh, this is the Wizard's Desk theme. So if we, which comes with the art subscription. So if you do have the art subscription, you'll get a lot of like these themes and whatnot. And this one is also for purchase on the store. So let's go over here, and I'm just gonna make this almost black. We'll put this at like 27. So it's a little bit on the blue side, maybe just a little bit darker. Yeah. So this is actually going to be like 14. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower down its opacity. And we can kind of start to paint out some of these shadows. I'm going to do them a bit darker. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come into my layers tab, and from the layer side of things, I can lower down. I can have a little bit of control over how dark those shadows are. And I'm just going to paint in some of these shadows. And I'm just going to be pretty liberal with them. I'm not going to be kind of too concerned about how they're and I'm going to lower down my opacity a little bit, and then I'm going to come in, I'm going to do some of these ones as well. Add in a little bit more over here. I want to get like this feeling that there's like a divot down in through here, right? Make this a little bit larger. Same on this side. You can see how much detail we're kind of adding in here. We can come in and do some like little ones for some of these little plants. And maybe some even on the road here a little bit on some of these ridges that we've made. And you can see how much more interactive that kind of feels, right? Like that's these things. We can lower down the opacity, and we can do some more as this kind of like fades out here, right? Same over here. And again, we can always come back into our tab over here, and we can adjust these. Get this kind of right here. That's one of the reasons why I like to put all the shadows on its own layer, is so that I can actually interact with the layers system and kind of adjust that as we go here. Now, the only things like these effects tabs, right? These things are the only things that will not be exported if we export this as its own image at the end, right? So we want to make sure that we're aware of that. And these add a lot of like really cool elements here, like the water ripples and the little bits of stuff that's kind of floating in the background here in our water. But it's not going to be And we're not going to be able to export that if we decide to make this a single image. So that's one of the reasons why I like to paint in a lot of this stuff here. One of the things that I think I'll do here, right, we have our water, which is here. And then we have like this, that's on the gravestone layer. So maybe on this layer, what I'll do is I'm actually going to make this a little bit oblong. So let's do like something like this, right? Not quite that long, maybe like 2.5. And I just want to do some a little bit underneath some of these. And that's just going to make it, even though that's probably not the way that it would be, we probably wouldn't have but this is going to help separate some of this stuff, right? So you can see here we don't have it, and here we have it, and it just adds a little bit of extra oomph to the separation between these items. Same with like these rocks. You kind of create some fun interactions here. Remember we did some reflections last time? Showed you guys how you can create like reflections in the water. And I'm just going to kind of go around and do all of these while we're doing it. So we have a nice little baseline for these. Back onto this layer. Let's make this round again. And I'm just going to add in some of these other plants here. All right, guys, we're winding down on the stream for this week. Do you guys have any questions? Is there anything that I can help you guys with before we call it quits? I think what we'll do is let's go into the new volcanic pack here before we go too far here. Let's make a new painting layer, and I'm going to go. Let's just go here, and we can turn off our stroke. Switch over to our fill. Let's grab this guy. And we can drop this down something like this, or maybe even like here. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, you're very welcome. And once you have something like this, if you get like these settings that you like, all you have to do is do this, and it will adjust all of that stuff: the fade, any sort of changes that you make, right? So we can kind of come in here now. Right? Or we could even do like ground fog and areas, get all this like mist and things kind of going on. So you can add lots of really cool stuff like that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, showing off all the new animated stuff that's going to be coming out in the next art pack, which is super exciting. I think there's something like 15 or so animated fills and decorations. So that's they take a considerable amount of time to create. So that's why that they're going to be a lot less. They're going to be more limited than the static images. But as we progress each month, we're going to be releasing more and more. So as things go on, and if you guys are unaware of this, they have the tag animated. So animated, you can just do a search for it. And this is all of the animated images that have been released so far. So we got lots of really cool, like leaf overlays, fish, fire, lots of smoke elements, water elements, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so that goes to the listing of all of the released art stuff so far, which there's a lot. Great, thanks everyone. So I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you all next time. Enjoy your map making, and we'll see you. See you next time. Thanks everybody. Take care.